Don't fill my kids' heads with that nonsense. James Carver's roar echoed through the Victorian wooden house, drowning out the sound of waves from the Maine coast. Under the soft glow of a golden lamp, Evelyn Brooks knelt beside Liam, Noah, and Eli, the 6-year-old triplets, their hands clasped tightly in a prayer for their late mother, Laura. James, tall and broad, his eyes blazing with anger, slammed a stack of bills onto the floor. The pain of losing his wife surged like a crashing wave. Evelyn, trembling, tried to explain. She only wanted to ease the children's longing, but James wouldn't listen. "You're done here. Get out." The kids sobbed, their eyes pleading. Could one night of rage shatter this family's hope? Morning sunlight filtered through the pine trees, casting shimmering patches of light on the wooden floor of the Victorian house in the Maine coastal town. The distant sound of waves crashed softly, but in the kitchen, the silence was suffocating. James Carver stood by the counter, clutching a cold cup of coffee, his gaze fixed on 3 empty chairs around the dining table. Liam, Noah, and Eli, the 6-year-old triplets, usually buzzing with silly stories of pirate ships or dinosaurs, were nowhere to be seen. Last night, after James's furious outburst sent Evelyn Brooks, the nanny who dared teach his kids to pray away, the Carver house sank into an eerie quiet. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. James, towering in a wrinkled gray shirt, tried to focus on his laptop screen. Emails from his tech company piled up, but his mind wandered. The image of his 3 boys sitting motionless on the rug, hands clasped, eyes brimming with tears as he yelled at Evelyn, replayed relentlessly. Liam, the sensitive one, had clung to Noah, while Eli, usually bold, just hung his head, his small shoulders trembling. "We just wanted to talk to Mom," Noah had whispered, his voice breaking. James had cut him off, unwilling to hear. Now, the silence from his sons felt like a blade slicing through him. He stepped into the hallway, his leather shoes clacking on the wooden floor. The boys' bedroom door was ajar, revealing an unfamiliar scene. Liam sat on his bed, clutching their mother Laura's old teddy bear, but not drawing as he usually did. Noah, always curious and rummaging through corners, stared blankly out the window at the glittering waves in the distance. Eli, the mischievous one, lay sprawled on the rug, ignoring his pile of spaceship toys. James stood at the threshold, his throat tightening. "Hey boys," he called, forcing a cheerful tone. "How about breakfast? French toast? Dad's specialty?" No one answered. Liam gave a faint nod. Noah and Eli didn't even look up. Back in the kitchen, James clenched his fists. He wasn't used to this distance from his own sons. Before, Laura had been the glue, always knowing how to make the boys laugh or spin silly stories about singing whales. James only knew work, providing, keeping things in control. But now, with Laura gone and Evelyn chased away, he realized he didn't know how to fill the void. He opened the fridge, grabbing butter and eggs, his movements clumsy, as if playing a role that wasn't his. A slice of bread fell to the floor, and he muttered, "Damn it." Maybe it wasn't just the bread falling, his whole world was crumbling. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. The board needed him this afternoon. The merger was hitting snags. James stared at the screen, then out the window, where 3 small figures appeared in the yard. Liam, Noah, and Eli sat on the grass, not playing, just sitting, shoulder to shoulder, gazing at the distant waves. A sharp pain stabbed James's chest, not from work, but from a truth he didn't want to face. His sons were quietly slipping away from him. Evelyn had brought a flicker of light, even if just through simple prayers. He had snuffed it out. Now, this house was no longer a home, just an empty shell. He stepped outside, trying to break the silence. "Hey boys, wanna go fishing? I know a spot by the harbor." Eli looked up, his usually sparkling eyes now dull. "Miss Evelyn said Mom could hear us if we talked to her," he whispered. James froze, unsure how to respond. He wanted to say it was just a fantasy, but Eli's fragile, hopeful gaze stopped him. "Did she now?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Noah nodded. "But now she's gone, so maybe Mom can't hear us anymore." James felt his heart constrict. Back inside, his eyes fell on a small wooden box on the kitchen counter, Evelyn's final gift. He hadn't opened it, but its presence was a relentless reminder. Had he been wrong to send her away? Were those prayers really brainwashing, or just a way for his boys to find some peace? As laughter faded from this house, what would James do to bring it back? Or would he let grief continue to cage his family? Night fell, draping the Victorian house in Maine with a thin veil of mist, as if hiding unspoken secrets. In the kitchen, the faint glow of a lamp illuminated the small wooden box on the counter, Evelyn Brooks's final gift before James Carver sent her away. James stood there, gripping a glass of bourbon, his eyes locked on the box like it was a ticking bomb. Yesterday, he'd ignored it. But now, with the distant sound of waves and the weight of his son's silence, Liam, Noah, and Eli pressing down, the box became an accusation he couldn't escape. James took a deep breath, setting the glass down. The clink of crystal on marble echoed softly. He reached out, his fingers brushing the worn wooden surface, carved with a small wave, a detail he hadn't noticed before. Inside were 3 crayon drawings from the triplets. Liam's showed Evelyn standing under a starry sky, holding hands with the boys, with a faint outline of Laura, their mother, smiling among the clouds. Noah's depicted Evelyn reading bedtime stories, a crescent moon hanging above. Eli's, with bold strokes, showed the whole family on a pirate ship, Evelyn at the bow, grinning brightly. Beneath them was a folded note in Evelyn's slanted handwriting. "Dear Mr. Carver, I'm sorry for overstepping. I only wanted to ease Liam, Noah, and Eli's longing for their mother. At their age, that pain is too big to carry alone. I only hope to bring some comfort. Evelyn." James read it, his hand gripping the paper, feeling his chest tighten. He wanted to tear it apart, to dismiss it as a cheap excuse. But the image of his sons whispering to Laura by the window last night flashed in his mind. "Miss Evelyn said Mom could hear us if we talked to her," Eli had said, his voice full of hope. James had cut him off, but now he wondered, what scared him so much? Not the prayers, but the peace they brought, something he couldn't give his sons. He slumped into a chair, his eyes sweeping over the now frigid kitchen. The breakfast bowls his sons hadn't touched this morning still sat on the table, evidence of the growing distance. James remembered Laura, how she filled this house with impromptu songs and silly stories about dancing sharks. He'd always been the outsider, buried in million-dollar contracts, leaving parenting to her. Now, with Laura gone and Evelyn banished, he realized he didn't know where to start. "I'm a terrible father," he muttered, his voice fading into the silence. Outside, the wind rustled through the pines, carrying the salty tang of the sea. James stepped onto the porch, where his sons once played with Evelyn, building imaginary sandcastles and laughing like they'd never known pain. Now, the backyard was empty, only the swing swaying lightly. He recalled Noah's words, "If Miss Evelyn's gone, maybe Mom can't hear us anymore." Those words cut like a knife, forcing James to face the truth. He hadn't just sent Evelyn away. He'd stolen his son's last shred of comfort. He returned inside, his hand brushing the box again. Part of him wanted to toss it, to erase the guilt gnawing at him. But another part, quieter, whispered that maybe Evelyn was right, that his sons needed something to hold on to, even if just a whisper to their mother. James closed the box but didn't put it away. He left it on the counter, a reminder that he had to do something before his sons drifted further away. And his phone buzzed, another email from the company, but this time, he didn't open it. Instead, he looked out the window, where moonlight glinted off the dew-soaked pines. Would James find the courage to admit his mistake, or would he let grief continue to divide his family? Dawn broke over the Maine coastal town, painting the sky silver. But in the Carvers' Victorian house, the air hung heavy, like a storm waiting to break. James Carver stood in the backyard, his shoes muddy from the damp earth, watching his triplets, Liam, Noah, and Eli, sit quietly on the grass. They weren't running or joking. They arranged stones in a small circle, as if building a fortress to shield their sorrow. Their withdrawal after Evelyn Brooks's departure was no longer a fleeting moment. It had become a chasm, and James felt himself standing on the edge, helpless. He stepped inside, his hands clenched, grasping at the last threads of control. On the kitchen table, Evelyn's wooden box sat like a relentless reminder of his mistake. James tried to ignore it, opening his laptop to skim through dozens of emails from Reed Technologies, the company he'd built from nothing. An urgent board notification flashed. The merger needed his signature by Monday. But his mind wasn't there. It drifted to Laura, who once filled this house with laughter, and to Evelyn, who tried to bring light back to his sons. He snapped the laptop shut, the thud echoing like an admission of defeat. In the living room, Liam sat curled up on the sofa, clutching a pirate picture book Evelyn used to read to them. Noah, usually curious, flipped through a few pages before abandoning it, his eyes blank. Eli, the boldest, scribbled chaotically on a sheet of paper, not his usual spaceships or dragons, just tangled lines, like his mind was lost. "What do you boys want for lunch?" James asked, forcing a cheerful tone. "Pizza?" Noah shrugged. Liam didn't respond, and Eli muttered, "Whatever." James felt his chest tighten. He'd thought he could control everything, his company, his family, his grief, but now he controlled nothing. He stepped onto the back porch, where the pines swayed in the wind, carrying the scent of sea salt and memories of Laura's life. She used to bring the boys here, teaching them to find perfect seashells or count the waves breaking on the shore. James never joined, always busy with international calls or financial reports. Now, he realized he'd missed not just Laura, but the moments that made a family. He recalled Eli's words. "Miss Evelyn said Mom could hear us if we talked to her." Those simple words now felt like a beacon illuminating the shadows in his soul. But he'd sent Evelyn away, snuffing out his son's fragile hope. Back in the kitchen, his eyes fell on the wooden box again. He didn't open it, not yet, but he didn't put it away either. Instead, he pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts, his finger hovering over Evelyn's name. He wanted to call, to apologize, but pride and fear of vulnerability stopped him. He told himself, "I can handle this. I have to. But deep down, he knew he was lying. His sons needed more than rushed meals or hollow reassurances. They needed a father who was present, not just a shadow in the house. That afternoon, James found Liam in the yard, arranging stones into a star shape. "Nice work, buddy," he said, kneeling beside him. Liam looked up, eyes glistening. "Miss Evelyn said if I made a star, Mom would see it from the sky." James swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. He wanted to call it childish, but Liam's hopeful, fragile gaze silenced him. "Is that so?" he said softly, resting a hand on his son's shoulder. "What else do you think Mom sees?" Liam gave a small smile. "I think she sees me being sad." Those words cut like a blade, forcing James to realize he could no longer hide. Would James face his mistake, or let pride blind him to the chance to bring his sons closer? Sunlight streamed through the pines, scattering glimmers of light across the kitchen of the Victorian house in Maine, but it wasn't enough to dispel the chill in the air. James Carver stood by the stove, clutching a skillet, awkwardly pouring pancake batter, the burnt smell rising as he flipped too late. "Damn it," he muttered, tossing the charred piece into the trash. Today, he'd canceled a critical board meeting at Reed Technologies unheard of in his 10-year career. But the sad eyes of Liam, Noah, and Eli, after days of silence, forced him to stop. He couldn't let work bury the void in this house any longer. James set a plate of misshapen pancakes on the table, forcing a smile as he called, "Hey, Knights, breakfast time." Liam appeared first, his brown hair tousled, dragging his chair with reluctance. Noah followed, clutching a book about whales Evelyn used to read, his eyes distant. Eli, usually the loudest, shuffled in, silent. James's heart clenched. He remembered Laura's mornings, filled with toast and silly pirate stories that made the house hum. Now, he had only lumpy pancakes and his son's silence. "Look, I made stars for you guys," James said, pointing to a pancake he'd tried to shape. Liam raised an eyebrow, a tiny smile flickering the first in days. Noah took a bite, grimacing. "Dad, this is too hard." Eli burst out laughing, a rare sound that lit up the kitchen. "It's more like a rock than a pancake, Dad." James feigned outrage, waving his spatula like a weapon. "A rock? Then you'll have to eat the Pirate King's rocks." Eli's laughter spread to Noah, then Liam, and for a moment, James felt warmth creep into his heart. After breakfast, James led the boys to the living room, determined to try something new. He picked up the pirate picture book Liam clung to, his voice awkward. Once upon a time, there was a ship called the Silver Wind. He mimicked a pirate's growl, making a fierce face, and Eli giggled, jumping onto the sofa, pretending to wield a sword. Noah, usually shy, chimed in, "Dad," do the sea dragon voice. James tried a clumsy roar, full of enthusiasm, and for the first time, he saw his son's eyes light up, as if a piece of them had returned. But when the story ended, Liam looked out the window, his voice tiny. Miss Evelyn told it better. She did a funny pirate voice. James's smile faltered. He wanted to protest, to say he could do just as well, but Liam's longing gaze silenced him. He realized his sons didn't just miss Evelyn, they missed the comfort she brought, something he still couldn't reach. "Is that so?" he said gently. "How'd she do it?" Noah jumped in. "She sang Mom's song, then told stories like Mom was listening." James nodded, hiding the pang in his chest. That afternoon, he let the boys play in the yard, where they began stacking stones into a star, like Liam had done before. James stood on the porch, watching their small figures, feeling both hope and unease. He'd tried today, but were clumsy pancakes and pirate stories enough to pull his sons closer? The wooden box from Evelyn sat on the kitchen counter, unopened but ever present, a reminder he was fighting something bigger than himself. He pulled out his phone, his finger hovering over Evelyn's name, but stopped. Could one day of being a devoted dad make up for the gaps he'd left? Or did James need something bigger to save his family? The sunset bathed the Maine coastal town in a radiant orange, gilding the pines outside the Carver's Victorian house. James Carver stood silently by the large living room window, his gaze following his triplets, Liam, Noah, and Eli, sitting in a small circle on the grass. They weren't playing or laughing as they had when Evelyn was here. They whispered, heads close, as if sharing a secret with the distant waves. James started to step out, to break the moment, but Liam's small voice stopped him. "Mom, I made a bigger star today." James's heart froze. He stepped back, hiding in the shadow of the curtain, unwilling to interrupt. Noah, the curious one, added, "Miss Evelyn said if we tell stories, Mom will hear us from the sky." Eli, usually bold, spoke softly. "I wanted to tell Mom about the pirate ship story Dad read today, but it wasn't like Miss Evelyn's." James felt his chest grow heavy. He'd thought prayers or talking to Laura were foolish, something that would trap his sons in fantasy. But now, watching their small figures under the sunset, he realized it wasn't fantasy, it was how they kept their mother alive. James stepped lightly into the kitchen, where Evelyn's wooden box sat on the counter, like a lighthouse in his storm of emotions. He didn't open it, but the memory of the crayon drawings and Evelyn's apology made him pause. Yesterday, he'd tried with clumsy pancakes and pirate stories, and his son's smiles had given him hope. But their words by the window reminded him he hadn't truly reached their pain. Laura had been their world's center, and Evelyn, even briefly, had helped them find that light again. And James? He only knew work, control, and avoidance. He sank into a chair, rubbing his temples, trying to shake off the helplessness. His phone buzzed a text from his assistant. The board needed him in Boston tomorrow morning. James stared at the screen, then out the window, where his sons now pointed at the sky, as if searching for a star. He turned off the phone, something he hadn't done in 10 years running Reed Technologies. "I have to do something," he muttered, his voice hoarse. He remembered how Laura used to sit with the boys on evenings like this, singing lullabies or telling tales of talking whales. He lacked her gift, but for the first time, he wanted to try. James stepped into the yard, carrying Laura's old blanket, its faint jasmine scent lingering. "Hey boys," he called softly. "It's getting chilly. Come inside, or should Dad sit out here with you?" Liam looked up, his eyes brightening slightly. "Sit here, Dad," he said, pointing to the grass beside them. James spread the blanket, sitting down, the damp grass cold through his pants. "What were you telling Mom?" he asked, keeping his tone natural. Noah smiled shyly. "I told her about the whale you drew yesterday. It was ugly, but funny." Eli chimed in. "I told Mom you made pancakes hard as rocks." James laughed, the first real laugh in days, feeling a weight lift. He looked up at the sky, where stars began to twinkle. "Your mom would love hearing these stories," he said, his voice trembling. I think I want to tell her one too." The boys looked at him, waiting. James took a deep breath, feeling like he was crossing an invisible line. "Laura," he began, "today I burnt 3 pancakes, and the boys said they were like rocks." Liam laughed loudly, hugging his arm. But I'm trying, you know that. I'm trying to make them laugh like you did. Time seemed to pause. James felt a wave of emotion, grief for Laura, fear of failing his sons, and a faint hope he could change. Liam tilted his head, whispering, "Do you think Mom hears us, Dad?" James looked at the sky, where a shooting star streaked by, leaving a trail of light. "I think she's listening," he replied, his voice shaky. "And I think she's happy you're still telling her stories." Eli, usually mischievous, grew serious. Miss Evelyn said, "Mom's always here. Just invisible." James nodded, not contradicting for the first time. He realized Evelyn's simple words had given his sons a way to keep Laura close. They sat longer, sharing small stories about Liam's kite plans, Noah's question if whales dream, Eli's dream of being a ship captain. James listened, feeling the invisible wall between him and his sons begin to crack. He wasn't just the father who gave orders or worked. He was becoming part of their world, if only in small steps. But he knew this moment was fragile. Evelyn's wooden box sat on the kitchen counter, a reminder he'd pushed away the person who brought this light. Could he do this alone? Or did he need Evelyn to guide the way? As the boys yawned, James carried each one inside, Laura's blanket still draped over their shoulders. He tucked them into bed, his eyes lingering on the room where Laura once sang lullabies. For the first time, he didn't feel alone thinking of her. But as he turned off the light, a question lingered. Would these whispered moments under the stars be enough to heal his sons? Or did James need to do something bigger to restore happiness to his family? Rain pattered on the roof of the Victorian house in Maine, its soft tapping blending with the distant waves, like a mournful lullaby. In his study, James Carver sat under the dim glow of a desk lamp, clutching his phone, his thumb hovering over Evelyn Brooks. Last night, under a starry sky, he'd knelt with Liam, Noah, and Eli, whispering to Laura, feeling a connection with his sons for the first time. But that moment also revealed a painful truth. He couldn't bring the light Evelyn had. Her wooden box, still on the kitchen counter, was a ceaseless reproach for the anger that drove her away. James took a deep breath, his eyes scanning a family photo on the desk, Laura beaming, holding the triplets, while he stood behind, stern as an outsider. He'd been wrong to think he could control everything, that his sons didn't need the prayers or comfort Evelyn offered. "I have to fix this," he muttered, and before pride could stop him, he pressed call. The ringing echoed, each tone like a heartbeat pounding in his chest. When Evelyn's gentle voice answered, "Hello, Mr. Carver?" his throat went dry. "Evelyn," he began, voice faltering. I'm sorry." He spoke of the days since she left. The silence from Liam, Noah, and Eli, the drawings in the wooden box, and the moment under the stars when he whispered to Laura with his sons. "I was wrong to send you away," he admitted, voice trembling. "The boys need you. We need you." Silence hung for a moment, only the rain tapping outside. Evelyn replied, calm but firm. "Mr. Carver, I care deeply for the boys, but if I return, I need to care for them my way without control, without judgment." James nodded, though she couldn't see. "I understand," he said. "Just please come back." Evelyn agreed to consider, promising an answer by morning. As the call ended, James felt a mix of relief and anxiety. He stepped onto the porch, where the rain had stopped, leaving puddles glinting under streetlights. He recalled Liam holding his hand last night, Noah's laugh about the whale, Eli sitting quietly when speaking of their mother. Those moments were because of Evelyn, who helped his sons navigate a pain he couldn't touch. But would she agree to return? And if she did, could he learn to let go of control to let her truly help his family? Inside, the boys were asleep, but James found Liam in the living room, clutching the pirate book Evelyn used to read. "Dad," he yawned. "Will Miss Evelyn come back?" James knelt, ruffling his son's hair. "I hope so, buddy," he said softly. She knows how to make things fun, doesn't she?" Liam nodded, eyes brightening. "She said Mom's always close. We just have to talk to her." James smiled, feeling a piece of his heart fall into place. Back in his study, his eyes fell on the wooden box. No longer an accusation but a promise. He hadn't reopened it, but he knew he would soon, if Evelyn returned. His phone buzzed an email from the company, reminding him of the Boston meeting. James skimmed it, unopened. For the first time, he put family above work, but he knew this journey was just beginning. He had to learn to be the father his sons needed, not just a provider. Would Evelyn accept his apology and return to save this family, or would James face an even greater challenge alone? The front door of the Victorian house in Maine creaked open, revealing Evelyn Brooks, a small suitcase in hand, her brown hair glowing gold in the morning sunday. Liam, Noah, and Eli, the triplets, stood frozen on the porch, their eyes sparkling as if seeing a miracle. "Miss Evelyn!" Eli shouted, charging forward, pulling Liam and Noah along. They hugged her tightly, their laughter ringing out, dispelling the gloom that had cloaked the house for days. James Carver stood behind, hands in pockets, a shy smile on his lips. He'd called her last night, apologized, and now, seeing his sons radiant, he knew he'd made the right choice, though it wasn't easy. Evelyn stepped into the kitchen, setting her suitcase down, her eyes catching the wooden box she'd left on the counter. "I see it's still here," she said, her voice light but teasing. James nodded, scratching his head like a caught schoolboy. "I haven't dared open it again," he admitted. "But the boys told me about the drawings, and I realized I was wrong." Evelyn looked at him, her gaze not judging, just listening. "I was jealous," James continued, his voice lower. "Jealous of how you brought them peace, something I couldn't do since Laura left." The boys pulled Evelyn into the living room, vying to share stories of the days she was gone. Liam showed off a new drawing of a flying ship, Noah talked about a whale in his dream, and Eli, with a mischievous grin, declared he'd be the greatest pirate captain in the world. Evelyn laughed, sitting on the floor, letting the boys surround her. James stood at the threshold, watching, feeling the house come alive again. He remembered Laura doing the same, sitting among the boys, turning ordinary moments into magic. But for the first time, he didn't feel like an outsider. He was part of it, if only just beginning. Evelyn turned to him, still on the floor. "Mr. Carver, I came back for the boys, but I need you to trust me, not just with words, but with actions." James nodded, his eyes sincere. "I'll try, Evelyn. I promise." She smiled, then turned back to the boys, starting a story about a singing sea dragon, making them laugh loudly. James stood there, warmth spreading through his chest. But deep down, he knew Evelyn's return wasn't the answer to everything. He had to learn to be the father his sons needed, not just rely on her. At noon, Evelyn led the boys to the backyard, where they began building a pirate fortress from branches and seashells. James joined, clumsily stacking stones, making Eli laugh when a pile collapsed. "Dad, you need Miss Evelyn to teach you how to build," the boy teased, and James feigned a grimace, tossing a small stick at Eli, sparking laughter from the group. In that moment, under the sunlight and sound of waves, James felt a connection he'd forgotten. But watching Evelyn, he realized she wasn't just a nanny, she'd opened a door he'd kept locked since Laura's death. As dusk fell, James and Evelyn sat on the porch, watching the boys play. "You know," he said, his voice low, "I thought keeping everything under control was how to protect them, but I was wrong. You gave them something I couldn't hope." Evelyn smiled, her gaze distant. "Everyone needs hope, Mr. Carver. Even you." Her words made James pause. He looked out at the sea, where waves glinted under the sunset, wondering if he could learn to open his heart like his sons had. But as night fell, James got an email from the company, reminding him of the Boston meeting he'd skipped. The pressure of work loomed again, like a shadow threatening this fragile peace. He glanced through the window, seeing Evelyn reading to the boys, the golden lamplight illuminating their glowing faces. Would Evelyn's return be enough to keep this family together, or would James let work pull him away from his sons once more? The smell of burnt toast wafted from the kitchen of the Victorian house in Maine, joined by Eli's gleeful shout, "Dad, you turned the bread into charcoal again." James Carver, sleeves rolled up, stood by the oven, raising a wooden spoon in mock surrender, a rare smile on his face. Liam and Noah, seated at the dining table, burst out laughing as James set down a plate of blackened toast, declaring, "This is the Pirate King's specialty, boys." Evelyn Brooks, standing by the counter, stifled a laugh, her eyes twinkling as the house, for the first time in months, filled with laughter. Her return had breathed life into the Carver family, and today's breakfast was vivid proof. James, usually rigid in a corporate suit, now fumbled with fruit, leaving misshapen watermelon chunks that Eli teased. "Dad, why's it look like an alien planet?" Evelyn stepped in, taking the knife, and with a few deft cuts, turned the mess into small stars. "Here, Captain Eli, stars for your ship," she said, winking. Liam clapped. Noah cheered, and James, though pretending to scowl, couldn't hide his relief. He watched Evelyn, telling a silly story about a whale stealing bread, making the boys laugh hysterically. He realized what he'd called her nonsense was magic, a way to keep his sons tied to joy. Breakfast became a new ritual, not just eating but bonding. Evelyn guided the boys to share stories, from Noah's dream of a sea dragon to Liam's plan to paint a big picture for Laura. James joined, clumsily recounting a time he tried fishing at the harbor and fell in, making Eli laugh until tears streamed. "You're the worst pirate, Dad," Eli shouted, and James, instead of arguing, shrugged. "Well, at least I'm great at burning toast." The laughter echoed, louder than the waves outside, and James felt this house was no longer an empty shell. But amid the smiles, James saw a truth. He'd missed this simple joy for too long. Laura had created moments like these, and when she left, he'd buried himself in work, leaving his sons to wrestle with grief. Evelyn, with her warmth and patience, showed him that being a father wasn't just providing it, was being present. He watched her wipe syrup from Liam's cheek, feeling deep gratitude but also unease. He relied on her too much, and that scared him. Could he keep this light himself? That afternoon, the boys ran to the yard, continuing their pirate fortress with Evelyn, while James sat on the porch, skimming company emails. A message from his assistant warned, the Boston meeting couldn't be postponed again. James sighed, the pressure of work like a tidal wave threatening his newfound peace. He looked at the yard, where Evelyn taught the boys to make kites from branches and colored paper. Liam held his up, shouting, "Mom will see this from the sky." James smiled, but his heart was heavy. He needed to be here, but Reed Technologies, built to secure his son's future, was pulling him away. When Evelyn joined him on the porch, she handed him a mug of hot tea. "Mr. Carver, you look like you're fighting the whole world," she said, her voice teasing but kind. James gave a faint smile. "Just a piece of it. I just don't want to let them down again." Evelyn nodded, her gaze knowing. "You're doing well already, but don't try to do it all alone." Her words silenced James, who looked out at the sea, where the sunset burned red. He knew she was right, but a question lingered. Could James balance work and family, or would a new challenge shake the fragile bond Evelyn had brought? The sun hung low on the horizon, painting the Maine coastal cemetery red, where blades of grass swayed in the salty breeze. James Carver walked slowly along the stone path, holding the small hands of Liam, Noah, and Eli, each boy clutching a shimmering seashell picked from the beach this morning. Evelyn Brooks followed, carrying a basket of extra shells, her eyes gentle but tinged with sadness. Today was the first time the Carver family visited Laura's grave since her passing, a journey James had delayed too long, fearing the pain. But seeing his sons whisper to their mother under the stars, he knew it was time to let Laura be part of their healing. Laura's grave lay under an ancient pine, its simple stone etched, * Laura Carver, beloved mother, forever in our hearts, *. James stopped, his chest heavy, memories of Laura's radiant smile flooding back like waves. Liam stepped forward first, placing a star-shaped shell on the stone, his voice soft. "Mom, I picked this because you liked stars." Noah, shyly, set a spiral shell beside it. "I thought you'd like this, because it's like the waves you talked about." Eli, usually bold, hesitated before placing a gleaming white shell down. "Miss Evelyn said you'd see us from here," he said, looking to James for confirmation. James nodded, his throat tight. "Your mom sees everything, Eli." Evelyn knelt, setting the basket by the grave, then gently held the boy's hands. "Your mom must be so happy to see these beautiful shells," she said, her voice warm. James looked at her, feeling deep gratitude. Evelyn had suggested this visit after hearing Noah talk about bringing a piece of the sea to his mother. James once saw cemeteries as places of pain, but now, under the sunset and sound of waves. He saw it as a place to connect. He knelt, for the first time, placing a small shell picked with Laura on their honeymoon on the stone. "Laura," he whispered. "I'm trying. I promise." The boys began sharing stories, as if Laura sat there listening. Liam spoke of his new flying ship drawing, Noah about a whale in a book, and Eli declared he'd be a captain to take Mom around the world. James listened, feeling his grief lighten, not gone, but shared. Evelyn stood quietly, giving the family space, her presence like a guiding light helping them through this moment without breaking. As the sun set, the red-orange light reflected off the shells, as if they told Laura's story. James looked at his sons, their eyes no longer heavy but bright with a touch of hope. He realized this visit wasn't just to remember Laura, but to learn to live with her memory. Evelyn stepped forward, saying softly, "You boys made your mom so proud today." James looked at her, wanting to thank her, but only nodded, his eyes saying it all. On the drive home, the boys chattered in the back seat about collecting more shells for Mom. James drove, his heart lighter, but a thought lingered. He'd crossed a threshold today, but could he keep going without letting grief or work pull him back? His phone buzzed a text about the Boston meeting. He didn't open it, but the pressure loomed like an undercurrent. Evelyn, in the passenger seat, noticed his tension. "One step at a time, Mr. Carver," she said quietly. James gave a faint smile, knowing she was right, but wondering if he had the strength to keep going. Back home, the boys ran inside, carrying leftover shells to decorate their pirate fortress. James stood on the porch, gazing at the sea, feeling the fragile peace this visit brought. But would this peace last, or would a new challenge shake what the Carver family had just reclaimed? Night cloaked the Maine coastal town, the oil lamp in the Carver kitchen flickering, casting shadows on the wooden walls, as if recounting days gone by. James Carver sat in an armchair, clutching a cold coffee mug, watching Evelyn Brooks kneel by the fireplace, helping Liam, Noah, and Eli arrange seashells from the cemetery visit into a small picture. The boys' giggles rang out as Eli knocked over a stack, shells scattering across the floor. "Captain Eli's wrecked everything," he declared, and Evelyn laughed, pretending to chase him to capture him. James watched, feeling a warmth he thought was lost forever, but a vague unease crept into his heart. After the cemetery visit, the Victorian house seemed to breathe again. The boys glowed brighter, and James, though clumsy, was learning to be present. But tonight, as Evelyn sat with the boys for a bedtime story, James felt a need to join, not just observe. "Miss Evelyn," Noah asked, curious, "have you ever talked to someone in the sky?" The question made James freeze, his mug pausing midair. Evelyn smiled faintly, her eyes distant. "Yes, Noah," she said softly. "I used to talk to my brother Tommy. He passed when I was young, but I always felt he was out there, listening." James leaned forward, surprised by Evelyn's openness. He'd never asked about her past, always seeing her as just the nanny with a warm smile and storytelling knack. "What happened to your brother?" he asked, his voice rough. Evelyn met his gaze, unflinching. "Tommy had leukemia. He passed at 10. I learned grief never leaves, but keeping beautiful memories makes it part of you like a little light." Liam, clutching his teddy bear, whispered, "Like Mom?" Evelyn nodded. "Exactly, Liam. Your mom's still your light." Her words hit James like a gentle wave. He thought of Laura, the shells on her grave, how his sons found joy in remembering her. Evelyn, with her story, didn't just help the boys, she showed James that healing wasn't forgetting, but carrying grief with hope. He stood, joining them by the fireplace. "I want to tell a story about Mom too," he said, his voice shaky. "Your mom used to sing a whale song, and she was terrible at it, but she sang because you loved it." Noah laughed loudly. "She sounded like a yowling cat." James chuckled, feeling Laura was there, laughing with them. The conversation stretched on, Evelyn and James trading memories of Laura, Tommy, happy days, and sad ones. James realized he and Evelyn shared an invisible scar, and this sharing made him feel closer to her than ever. She wasn't just a nanny. She understood his pain, and that made him both grateful and uneasy. He feared relying on her too much, but couldn't imagine this house without her. As the boys yawned, Evelyn led them to bed, leaving James by the fireplace, staring at the glowing shells. He thought of Evelyn's words, "Grief is part of you." For the first time, he felt he could accept that, but a question lingered. His phone buzzed an email about the Boston meeting. He knew work's pressure waited, but he wanted to stay here, with his sons and Evelyn. Could James maintain the balance between family and work, or would a secret from Laura's past shake the healing they'd begun? The fire crackled in the backyard of the Victorian house in Maine, casting flickering shadows on the pines, as if dancing with the laughter of Liam, Noah, and Eli. The triplets sat around the campfire, holding sticks with roasting marshmallows, while Evelyn Brooks feigned a scream as Eli deliberately charred his. "Captain Eli, are you turning us into a pirate crew eating coal?" she teased, making the boys laugh loudly. James Carver sat on a folding chair, cradling a mug of hot cocoa, feeling this house, for the first time since Laura's passing, was truly a home. Family night, Evelyn's idea, had become a new tradition, and tonight, it brought a peace James thought was gone forever. Evelyn started a game, asking everyone to tell a super silly story. Liam, with his vivid imagination, spun a tale of a disco-dancing whale, making Noah choke on his cocoa. Noah countered with a story of a pirate cat piloting a spaceship, while Eli, not to be outdone, declared himself Pirate King, fighting a sea dragon with marshmallows. James, though hesitant, joined with a story of a singing opera wave, making everyone laugh as he mimicked a high-pitched wail. "Dad, you're worse than Mom," Eli shouted, and James, instead of arguing, laughed heartily, his heart unburdened. Amid the laughter, Evelyn pulled out a small box, holding old photos of Laura she'd found in a bookshelf. She handed them to the boys, her eyes gentle. "Tonight, let's tell stories for Mom, okay?" Liam held a photo of Laura smiling on the beach, hugging the boys, and whispered, "Mom, I love family night. I hope you see." Noah and Eli shared too, their voices soft, about what they wanted Laura to know, from Liam's new drawing to Noah's dream of being a scientist. James looked at his sons, realizing these simple moments were helping them heal. He picked up a photo of Laura under a sunset and said softly, "You'd love this, Laura. You always knew how to make things special." Evelyn sat quietly, giving the family space, her presence like a catalyst, letting stories flow naturally. James looked at her, grateful for how she turned grief into moments of love. He realized family wasn't just structure or duty, it was hugs, silly stories, and nights like this. But as the fire dimmed, a thought crossed his mind. He'd relied on Evelyn to bring this light, but could he sustain it himself? And would work, with its unread emails about the Boston meeting, let him be? As the boys yawned, Evelyn led them inside, leaving James by the dying fire. He looked at the starry sky, thinking of Laura, how she'd smile seeing her sons happy. But he also thought of Evelyn, who showed him being a father wasn't just control, but letting go and loving. He stood, dousing the fire, feeling a new chapter begin. But inside, he saw a notification on his phone, an urgent email warning that missing the Boston meeting could tank a $1 million merger. Work's pressure loomed like an undercurrent. Evelyn stepped onto the porch, carrying a blanket. "You look like you're carrying the whole ocean on your shoulders," she said, her voice teasing but caring. James gave a faint smile. "Just a piece of it. I just don't want to lose what we had today." Evelyn nodded, her gaze knowing. "You don't need to make it perfect, Mr. Carver. Just be here." Her words silenced James, who looked out at the sea, where waves lapped quietly. But could these family nights keep the Carver family together? Or would an unknown secret from Laura's past shake it all? Rain speckled the windows of the Victorian house in Maine, leaving glistening streaks on the glass, like the sky's tears. James Carver sat in his study, the desk lamp casting light on his tired face, his hand clutching a letter. "Received this morning an old envelope." The sender's slanted handwriting. "Margaret, Laura's sister." The letter arrived like a stone thrown into a calm lake, disturbing the peace the Carver family had just reclaimed through lively breakfasts, fireside family nights, and the visit to Laura's grave. James hadn't opened it, but Margaret's name, the sister Laura rarely mentioned, stirred a sense of an approaching undercurrent. He set the letter down, his eyes glancing at a family photo, Laura beaming, holding Liam, Noah, and Eli, while he stood behind, stern as a soldier. Margaret had cut contact with Laura after an argument James only vaguely knew about, a family rift Laura never fully explained. Now, this letter, arriving 2 years after Laura's death, was a wordless question. Why now? James heard the boys' laughter from the living room, where Evelyn Brooks helped them craft paper kites for their pirate fleet. He wanted to preserve this peace. But the letter on the desk felt like a warning that the past never truly slept. James stood, stepping into the living room, where Liam glued a paper star to his kite, Noah carefully tied string, and Eli, with a mischievous grin, declared his kite would fly highest. Evelyn looked up, noticing James's tense face. "Everything okay, Mr. Carver?" she asked softly. James shook his head, forcing a smile. "Just a letter from Laura's sister. I haven't opened it." Evelyn nodded, her gaze understanding. "Sometimes the past comes when you least expect it, but you don't have to face it alone." Her words made James pause, feeling a piece of his burden shared. He returned to his study, summoning the courage to open the letter. Margaret's handwriting trembled, as if written in emotion. "James, I know I have no right to reach out after all these years, but Laura left something I think the boys need to know." She wrote a list of dreams for Liam, Noah, and Eli, things she wanted them to pursue, like painting, exploring the ocean, or storytelling. "I'm holding it. If you want, I'll send it. But I also want to meet the boys, to make amends for leaving Laura." James's hand shook as he read. A list of Laura's dreams? It was like a gift, but also a challenge. Meeting Margaret meant reopening a past he wasn't ready for. He stepped into the yard, where Evelyn and the boys tested their kites. The sea breeze lifted Eli's kite, soaring in loops. "Look, Dad! It's flying to Mom!" he shouted, and James smiled, but his heart was heavy. He thought of Laura, how she dreamed of a colorful life for their sons, not just the security he tried to provide. Margaret's letter was a reminder he hadn't fully known Laura, and maybe he needed to face the past to help his sons move forward. Evelyn approached, resting a hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Carver, whatever that letter says, you and the boys are stronger than you think." James looked at her, eyes full of gratitude. "You always make things feel lighter, Evelyn," he said. She smiled, shrugging. "Just a bit of pirate magic." But as the boys ran inside, leaving James and Evelyn under the windy sky, he knew this letter would change everything. Would James dare face Laura's dreams, or would her past bring a new storm to the Carver family? The oil lamp flickered in the Carver living room in Maine, casting light on the worn leather cover of a journal Evelyn Brooks found under a cupboard. Etched with Laura's name in soft script, it was like a whisper from the past. James Carver sat on the sofa, hands trembling as he turned the pages, beside Liam, Noah, and Eli, their eyes wide with curiosity. Evelyn stood behind, her hand lightly on Liam's shoulder, her gaze tender but emotional. Margaret's letter, Laura's sister, had led them to this journal, a treasure holding Laura's dreams and messages for her sons, and for James. They found the journal after Margaret sent a small package with Laura's list of dreams. James had hesitated, fearing reopening the past would shake the fragile peace they'd found. But when Eli, with unrestrained curiosity, opened the box and pulled out the journal, shouting, "Did Mom write a book?" James knew he couldn't hide anymore. He opened the first page, reading aloud a passage Laura wrote when the boys were young. "Liam, my love, you'll paint the world with your imagination. Noah, you'll explore the ocean like an adventurer. Eli, you'll tell stories that make the world laugh." The boys listened, mouths agape, as if their mother spoke directly to them. Evelyn sat on the floor, her voice soft. "Your mom was truly special. She knew who you'd become." Liam hugged the journal, whispering, "Mom wanted me to paint." Noah nodded. "She knew I loved whales." Eli, usually mischievous, grew serious. "I'll tell stories for Mom, every day." James felt his eyes sting. Laura's words weren't just dreams, they were a guiding light, like the shells on her grave, like the stories by the campfire. He turned another page, finding a note for him. "James, you always try to protect us, but sometimes, let yourself feel. The boys need your heart, not just your strength." The message cut gently, but instead of pain, it brought relief. James realized Laura saw what he hid, his fear of opening his heart. He looked at Evelyn, who'd brought them to this moment, and said, "You were right, Evelyn. Grief doesn't vanish, but it can lead to beautiful places." Evelyn smiled, her eyes bright. "That's what Laura wanted, Mr. Carver, a family that loves, even through pain." They decided to create a memorial corner in the living room, with the journal, some shells, and a photo of Laura smiling on the beach. Liam added a star drawing, Noah a small whale model, and Eli wrote, "For Mom, from Captain Eli." As the boys went to bed, James and Evelyn sat by the lamp's glow. He told her about Margaret's letter, her wish to meet the boys. "I'm not ready," he admitted. "But for the boys, I'll try." Evelyn nodded. "You're doing well, Mr. Carver. One step at a time." Her words made James smile, but looking out at the sea, he felt an undercurrent. The journal brought them closer to Laura, but it opened new questions about Margaret, about Laura's untold stories, and the path ahead. Late at night, James stood on the porch, listening to the waves, the journal still in hand. He thought of his journey from the anger that drove Evelyn away, to the starry nights, and now Laura's words guiding them. But he knew this peace was fragile, and Margaret might bring new secrets. Would Laura's journal be enough to keep the Carver family together, or would the past's unknowns challenge them again? The main sky tonight glittered with stars, as if Laura still smiled from afar, watching her Carver family in their warm Victorian home. James Carver, once a father who only controlled, now learned to love through shells on a grave, fireside family nights, and Laura's journal of dreams. Liam, Noah, and Eli, the triplets, found laughter again, not to forget their mother, but to carry her in every step. Evelyn Brooks, with her open heart, became their guiding light, showing them healing wasn't erasing the past, but weaving it with joy and hope. Laura's journal opened a new chapter, but Margaret's letter, her sister, remained a lingering question. Unknown secrets about Laura might shake this peace, but James and his sons were now stronger to face them. Would they be ready for the past's new challenges, or would their story continue in another journey? If your heart stirred with the Carver family's journey, leave a comment, and let us know you want the next part. Where are you watching from, and when? Share your thoughts, maybe this story will touch someone you love in the USA. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated, and share this story with friends and family. We're thrilled to have you along for this journey.